What happens when one of Hollywood's biggest stars walks into a talk show expecting a friendly chat and instead finds herself in the fight of her career? What we witnessed on The View wasn't just another celebrity interview gone wrong. It was a masterclass in how quickly things can spiral when egos clash and questions cross the line. Margot Robbie, known for her grace under pressure, finally reached her breaking point, and Joy Behar was right there to push every single button. If you want to see how this explosive confrontation unfolded, make sure you hit that subscribe button and drop a comment below telling us whose side you're on, because trust me, you're going to have an opinion by the end of this. The tension was palpable from the moment Margot walked onto that stage. You could see it in her smile, just a fraction too tight, just a bit too practiced. The audience applauded as she took her seat, but there was something in the air that felt different. Joy Behar sat across from her with that familiar smirk, the one that says she's already got her questions loaded and ready to fire. Margot Robbie, welcome back to The View, Joy began, her voice dripping with a sweetness that didn't quite reach her eyes. It's been a while since we've had you here. Thanks for having me, Margot replied, settling into her chair. It's good to be back. So let's just dive right in, Joy said, leaning forward slightly. Your new film has been getting a lot of buzz, but there's also been quite a bit of controversy surrounding it. Some critics are saying it glorifies problematic behavior. What do you say to that? Margot's smile didn't waver, but you could see something flicker behind her eyes. I think the film actually does the opposite. It holds a mirror up to society and asks difficult questions. That's what good art does. Good art, Joy repeated, nodding slowly. But isn't there a responsibility that comes with your platform? When you're as famous as you are, don't you think you need to be more careful about the messages you're sending? I think audiences are smart enough to understand nuance, Margot said, her tone still pleasant but with an edge creeping in. We're not making children's films here. We're making content for adults who can think critically. Joy chuckled, but it wasn't a warm sound. That's interesting because your last 3 projects have all courted controversy in one way or another. Some people might say you're chasing headlines rather than making meaningful art. The other hosts shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Whoopi gave Joy a look, but Joy wasn't backing down. I think those people would be wrong, Margot said, her voice cooling noticeably. Every project I choose is something I believe in deeply. I'm not interested in playing it safe just to make everyone comfortable. Right. But there's a difference between not playing it safe and being deliberately provocative for attention, Joy pressed. Your production company has been criticized for its hiring practices, for the types of stories it chooses to tell. Don't you think that criticism is valid? Margot's jaw tightened slightly. Our hiring practices are actually exemplary. We've employed more women in key creative positions than most studios in Hollywood. As for the stories we tell, yes, they're challenging. That's the point. We're not interested in making fluffy entertainment that nobody remembers 5 minutes after they leave the theater. So everything else is fluffy entertainment? Joy shot back. That's quite a statement. That's not what I said, Margot replied, her patience clearly wearing thin. I'm saying there's room for all kinds of storytelling, and the kind we're doing happens to ask difficult questions. Questions like whether it's okay to romanticize toxic relationships. Joy asked, referencing a plot point from Margot's new film, because that's what some parents' groups are saying about your movie. Have these parents' groups actually seen the film? Margot asked, leaning forward now. Because if they had, they'd know that we explicitly show the consequences of toxic behavior. Nothing is romanticized. In fact, the entire third act is about the protagonist realizing how damaging the relationship has been. But you're showing it in such a glamorous light for the first 2 acts, Joy countered. Beautiful people, beautiful settings, a sweeping soundtrack. Young viewers might not make it to that third act lesson. Then maybe parents should have conversations with their children about media literacy instead of demanding that artists dumb down their work, Margot said, her voice sharp now. The audience gasped slightly at the directness of her response. Joy's eyebrows shot up. So, it's the parents' fault? I didn't say that, Margot said, clearly frustrated. I'm saying that art doesn't exist in a vacuum, and it's not my job as an artist to parent someone else's children. It's my job to tell honest, complex stories. Even if those stories hurt people? Joy asked. What stories are we talking about now? Margot asked, her confusion evident, because we seem to have moved from discussing the film to something else entirely. I'm talking about your interview last month, Joy said, pulling out a printed article from beside her chair, where you said, and I quote, that Hollywood needs to stop apologizing for making people uncomfortable. Some of your colleagues felt that was dismissive of legitimate concerns about representation and harm. Margot's eyes narrowed. That quote was taken completely out of context. I was talking about artistic risk-taking, not about ignoring people's pain or concerns about representation. In fact, in that same interview, I talked extensively about the importance of diverse voices in filmmaking. But you understand how it sounded, Joy pressed. I understand that media outlets often choose to highlight the most inflammatory interpretation of what someone says rather than engaging with the actual substance of their words, Margot replied coolly. I thought this show might be different, but I'm starting to wonder. The tension in the studio was thick enough to cut with a knife. The other hosts exchanged glances, clearly unsure whether to jump in or let this play out. We're just asking questions that our viewers want answered, Joy said, spreading her hands innocently. Are you? Margot asked. Or are you trying to create a viral moment by backing me into corners that don't exist? I think our viewers can judge that for themselves, Joy replied. I think they can too, Margot said, her voice deadly calm now. Let's talk about what I actually believe, instead of these manufactured controversies. I believe in making art that challenges people. I believe in employing diverse voices and telling stories that haven't been told. I believe in treating audiences like intelligent adults who can handle complexity. None of that should be controversial, but somehow, on this show, it is. Joy opened her mouth to respond, but Margot wasn't finished. You know what I find interesting? Margot continued, her voice gaining strength. I've been in this industry for over a decade. I've produced films, acted in films, championed emerging voices, fought for pay equity, and used my platform to highlight important causes. But the conversation you want to have is whether I'm being provocative for attention. That tells me everything I need to know about how women in this industry are viewed. We're either too quiet or too loud, too safe or too risky. There's no winning. That's not fair, Joy interjected. We ask tough questions of everyone who sits in that chair. Do you? Margot asked. Because I watched your interview with a certain male director last week who's made far more controversial work than I ever have, and you spent 20 minutes laughing at his anecdotes without once questioning his choices. The audience murmured at this. Joy's face flushed slightly. That's a different situation, Joy said. How? Margot asked, leaning back in her chair with her arms crossed. How is it different? Because from where I'm sitting, it looks like a double standard. Whoopi finally stepped in, trying to diffuse the situation. Look, I think we all need to take a breath here. Margot, I understand your frustration, but Joy is coming from a place of genuine curiosity. Is she, though? Margot asked, not taking her eyes off Joy. Because it doesn't feel like curiosity. It feels like an interrogation. Maybe if you weren't so defensive, it wouldn't feel that way. Joy shot back, her composure slipping slightly. Maybe if you weren't so accusatory in your framing, I wouldn't need to be defensive. Margot replied instantly. Every single question you've asked has had a negative assumption baked into it. When did you stop beating your wife? That kind of logic. That's ridiculous, Joy said. but her voice had an uncertain edge to it now. Is it? Margot asked. Let's review, shall we? You asked if I was being deliberately provocative for attention. You suggested my work romanticizes toxic behavior. You implied that I'm dismissive of legitimate concerns. You've questioned my hiring practices without any evidence of wrongdoing. At what point in this interview were you planning to ask me something that wasn't designed to make me look bad? Sarah Haynes jumped in nervously. Margot, I think what Joy is trying to get at is that you're such an influential figure, and with influence comes scrutiny. I welcome scrutiny, Margot said, turning to Sarah with a slightly softer expression. What I don't welcome is bad faith questioning that's designed to generate controversy rather than illuminate anything meaningful. There's a difference between holding someone accountable and trying to catch them in a gotcha moment. Nobody's trying to catch you in anything, Joy insisted. We're having a conversation. No, Joy, you're having a prosecution, Margot corrected. And I'm done being your defendant. The audience was dead silent now, hanging on every word. This was clearly not going according to anyone's script. Joy's face hardened. You know what, Margot? Maybe the problem isn't how I'm asking the questions. Maybe the problem is that you don't like being challenged. You're used to press tours where everyone kisses your feet and tells you how brilliant you are. Well, this isn't that. This is The View. We ask real questions here. Real questions, Margot repeated, a bitter laugh escaping her lips. You want to talk about real questions? Fine. Let's talk about the real question you're dancing around. You don't like that I have opinions. You don't like that I make art that makes people uncomfortable. You don't like that I won't apologize for taking up space in an industry that's tried to keep women small for decades. That's what this is really about. That's not true, Joy said, but her voice lacked conviction. Isn't it? Margot pressed. Because I've noticed a pattern in how you interview women versus men on this show. The men get asked about their craft, their vision, their legacy. The women get asked to defend themselves, to explain themselves, to justify their existence. Don't think I haven't noticed. Sunny Hostin cleared her throat. Margot, I think that's a bit of an overstatement. Is it? Margot asked, turning to Sunny. With respect, I don't think it is. I've watched this show for years. I've seen it happen over and over again. And I'm tired of pretending I don't see it just to be polite. So now we're sexist? Joy asked, her voice rising. Is that what you're accusing us of? I'm saying the questions reveal certain biases, whether you're aware of them or not, Margot said, her voice level but firm. I'm saying that the way you've approached this interview says a lot about how women who dare to be ambitious and uncompromising are treated in public spaces. We're all women here, Joy said, gesturing around the table. We're not your enemy. Then stop treating me like one, Margot replied quietly. The simplicity of the statement landed like a bomb. For a moment, nobody spoke. The cameras kept rolling, capturing every second of the uncomfortable silence. Finally, Joy spoke again, her voice tight. You came on this show to promote your film. We're giving you that platform. If you don't like our questions, maybe you shouldn't have agreed to come. You're absolutely right, Margot said, nodding slowly. I shouldn't have. I should have known better than to expect a substantive conversation about the work. I should have expected that it would devolve into this. Into what, exactly? Joy demanded. Into you trying to tear me down instead of engaging with what I'm actually trying to do with my career, Margot said. Look, I get it. I'm an easy target. I'm young. I'm successful. I've been fortunate enough to have opportunities that many people don't get. But instead of asking me how I'm using those opportunities, how I'm trying to create space for others, what I've learned along the way, you want to focus on manufactured controversies and out-of-context quotes. It's lazy journalism, Joy. Joy's face went red. Lazy journalism? I've been doing this for decades. Then you should know better, Margot said simply. You should know the difference between holding someone accountable and tearing them down for sport. You should know that there are ways to ask challenging questions without being hostile. You should know that creating division and conflict isn't the same thing as seeking truth. I think you need to get off your high horse, Joy snapped. You're not some martyr. You're a millionaire actress promoting a movie. You're right. I am, Margot agreed. I'm incredibly privileged. I've never denied that. But privilege doesn't mean I have to accept being misrepresented or attacked. And it doesn't mean I'm not allowed to point out when the conversation has gone off the rails. Alyssa Farah Griffin tried to steer things in a different direction. Margot, can we talk about the actual film? I'd love to hear about your character's journey. Margot turned to her with visible relief. Thank you, Alyssa. I'd love that. The character I play is a woman who's built her entire identity around being acceptable to others. She spent her whole life making herself smaller, quieter, more palatable, and the film is about what happens when she finally decides she's done with that. It's about reclaiming your voice and your power, even when the world punishes you for it. That sounds personal, Alyssa said gently. It is, Margot admitted. I think every woman can relate to that feeling of constantly calibrating yourself, wondering if you're too much or not enough. This character stops caring about that question. She decides she's going to be exactly who she is, and if people don't like it, that's their problem, not hers. Art imitating life? Alyssa asked with a small smile. Maybe a little, Margot said, allowing herself a genuine smile for the first time since the interview started going sideways. But Joy wasn't ready to let it go. So the film is basically about you. Margot's smile faded. It's about any woman who's ever been told she's too ambitious, too opinionated, too much. If that resonates with my personal experience, then yes, there are elements of my life in it. But it's bigger than just me. Convenient, though, Joy said. Making a film about how hard it is to be you. That's not what I said, Margot replied, her frustration evident again. And you know that's not what I said. You're deliberately twisting my words. I'm repeating what you just told us, Joy said. No, you're reframing what I said to make it sound self-absorbed, Margot countered. There's a difference, and frankly, I'm exhausted by it. This whole interview has been an exercise in you putting words in my mouth and then attacking me for them. If you feel attacked, maybe that says something about your own insecurities, Joy suggested. The audience gasped audibly at that. Even the other hosts looked shocked. Margot stared at Joy for a long moment, and when she spoke, her voice was ice cold. That's incredibly unprofessional, Joy, and honestly, it's beneath you. Or at least, it should be. Truth hurts sometimes, Joy said with a shrug. The truth is that you've spent this entire interview trying to provoke me, Margot said, her voice shaking slightly with barely contained anger. The truth is that you're not interested in my film, my work, or anything I actually have to say. You're interested in creating a moment, in getting me to lose my temper so you can play the clip over and over. Well, congratulations. Here's your moment. Margot stood up, and the studio erupted in murmurs. The producers were frantically gesturing from off camera, but Margot ignored them. Where are you going? Joy asked, looking genuinely surprised. I'm done, Margot said simply. I'm done with this interview, and I'm done pretending that what just happened here was acceptable. You wanted me to erupt, Joy? Well, here it is. I'm erupting. Not with screaming or theatrics, but with the simple statement that I will not sit here and be disrespected by someone who should know better. Sit down, Margot, Whoopi said firmly. Nobody's trying to disrespect you. With all due respect, Whoopi, that's exactly what just happened, Margot said, still standing. Joy just suggested that my response to being attacked is about my own insecurities. That's not journalism. That's not even fair conversation. That's a personal attack, plain and simple. Joy shifted in her seat, and for the first time, She looked slightly uncomfortable with how far things had gone. I was making an observation. You were being cruel, Margot corrected. There's a difference between tough questioning and cruelty, and you crossed that line about 10 minutes ago. Maybe you're just not used to people pushing back, Joy said, but her voice had lost some of its edge. I get pushed back on all the time, Margot said, her voice steady now. By critics, by audiences, by colleagues. The difference is that most of those people are engaging with my actual work and my actual positions, not with straw-man versions of them that they've constructed to make me look bad. You've spent this entire interview doing the latter. Sonny spoke up again. Margot, I think we're all getting a bit heated here. Maybe we can reset and have a more productive conversation. Margot looked at Sonny for a long moment, then slowly sat back down. Fine. I'll give you one more chance. But I want to be clear about something. I didn't come here to fight. I came here to talk about work I'm proud of, work that I think says something important about the world we live in. If you're actually interested in having that conversation, then let's have it. But if this is going to continue to be an ambush, I'm walking out that door, and I don't care what kind of headlines it generates. The other hosts exchanged glances. Joy looked like she was debating whether to keep pushing or to back down. Finally, Whoopi took control. All right, let's talk about the film, Whoopi said. Margot, you produced this, as well as starred in it. What made you want to tell this particular story? Margot took a breath, visibly composing herself. I wanted to tell a story about a woman's rage. Not hysteria, not emotion, but righteous anger at systems and people who try to diminish her. We so rarely see women's anger taken seriously on screen. It's either played for laughs or treated as something to be managed or medicated. I wanted to show anger as a valid, powerful response to injustice. And you don't think that's dangerous? Joy couldn't help but interject, telling women it's okay to be angry? Margot turned to her slowly. You're really asking me if it's dangerous to tell women their anger is valid? Joy, women have been told to swallow their anger for centuries. We've been told to smile, to be nice, to not make waves. And where has that gotten us? We're still fighting for equal pay, for bodily autonomy, for basic respect in professional spaces. Maybe if we'd been allowed to be angry earlier, we'd be further along. So you're advocating for anger, Joy said. I'm advocating for authenticity, Margot clarified. I'm advocating for women having the full range of human emotions, including anger, without being pathologized for it. When men are angry, they're passionate, they're driven, they're leaders. When women are angry, we're difficult, we're emotional, we're problematic. That double standard needs to end. But there are ways to express anger constructively, Sarah offered. Absolutely, Margot agreed. And that's what the film explores. It's not about mindless rage. It's about channeling anger into action, into change, into refusing to accept the unacceptable anymore. The character I play uses her anger to finally stand up for herself, to set boundaries, to demand better. That's not destructive. That's growth. Some people might say you're just making excuses for bad behavior, Joy said, unable to resist one more jab. Margot laughed, but there was no humor in it. Of course you would go there. Let me ask you something, Joy. When was the last time you were angry? Really? Genuinely angry about something? Joy looked taken aback by the question. I don't see how that's relevant. It's completely relevant, Margot said. Because you're sitting here judging my film, judging my choices, judging me, but you won't even acknowledge your own relationship with anger. This whole interview, you've been angry at me. I can feel it, but you're disguising it as professional questioning, as doing your job. At least I'm honest about it. I'm not angry at you, Joy protested. Yes, you are, Margot said calmly. And I don't even think it's about me specifically. I think I represent something that bothers you. Maybe it's my age. Maybe it's my success. Maybe it's that I won't play the game the way you think I should. But whatever it is, you've been taking it out on me for the last 30 minutes. Joy opened her mouth to respond, then closed it again. The studio was silent except for the hum of the cameras. Whoopi stepped in again. This has been one of the most intense interviews we've had in a while. That's one word for it, Margot said dryly. But I think it's also been important, Whoopi continued. Because this right here, this discomfort, this tension, this is what your film is about, isn't it? This is what happens when women stop being polite and start being real. Margot looked at Whoopi with something like gratitude. Yes, exactly. Thank you for understanding that. I don't think anyone here misunderstands your film, Joy said, her pride clearly wounded. We just have different opinions about its value. That's fine, Margot said. Different opinions are great. What's not fine is disguising your opinion as objective criticism and then using your platform to make me defend positions I don't actually hold. If you don't like the film, say you don't like the film. But don't invent reasons to discredit it or me. Alyssa jumped in, trying to end on a more positive note. Margot, what do you hope audiences take away from this film? I hope they feel seen, Margot said simply. I hope women especially feel seen. I hope they watch this character's journey and recognize parts of themselves in it. And I hope they leave the theater feeling a little braver, a little more willing to take up space, a little more ready to stop apologizing for existing. That's all I've ever wanted with any project I've worked on. That's a beautiful sentiment, Alyssa said warmly. It is, Sunny agreed. And I think regardless of anyone's opinion about the film itself, that intention is admirable. Joy remained silent, her arms crossed, clearly still processing everything that had just transpired. Margot turned to look at her directly. Joy, I don't hate you. I don't even dislike you. But I think you owe me an apology for how you conducted this interview. Not because I'm demanding one, but because I think deep down you know you crossed some lines today. The studio held its breath. Joy looked at Margot for a long moment, a complicated series of emotions playing across her face. Pride, defensiveness, but also something that might have been recognition. I think we both said some things that were heated, Joy finally said, which wasn't quite an apology, but was clearly the closest she was going to get. Fair enough, Margot said, nodding. I know I got heated too, but I stand by everything I said. This conversation needed to happen, even if it was uncomfortable. Uncomfortable is one word for it, Whoopi said with a small laugh, trying to lighten the mood. Margot Robbie, everyone. The film opens this Friday. The audience applauded, but it was tentative, uncertain. Everyone in that studio knew they'd just witnessed something unusual, something that would be talked about for weeks to come. As they went to commercial break, Margot remained seated, her posture straight, her expression composed. She'd said what she needed to say. She'd stood her ground. And regardless of how the interview would be spun in the headlines, she knew she'd done exactly what her film's protagonist would have done. She'd refused to be small. She'd refused to apologize. She'd taken up space and owned every inch of it. The cameras stopped rolling, and the studio lights dimmed slightly. The conversation was over, but its impact was just beginning. What had started as a promotional interview had become something much bigger, a mirror held up to how women are expected to behave in public spaces, how their anger is received, how their boundaries are tested. Margot stood up one final time, thanked the crew, and walked off that stage with her head held high. She'd come to talk about a film about a woman finding her voice. Instead, she'd given a live demonstration of exactly what that looks like, and whether people agreed with her or not, nobody could say she hadn't been authentic. Nobody could say she hadn't been real. And in a world of carefully managed celebrity appearances and pre-approved talking points, that authenticity was radical all by itself. The View had asked for an interview. What they got was a revolution, small but significant. A woman refusing to play by rules that were designed to keep her in check. And in that refusal, Margot Robbie had proven the exact point her film was trying to make. Sometimes, the most powerful thing a woman can do is simply refuse to shrink, refuse to soften, refuse to apologize for taking up the space she's earned. The interview was over, but the conversation it started was just beginning. And that, more than any promotional appearance could have achieved, was exactly what Margot had been hoping for all along. So, what do you think? Was Margot right to stand her ground? Or did she take things too far? Drop your thoughts in the comments below, hit that subscribe button, and let us know, if you were in Margot's position, would you have walked out or stayed to finish the fight?